Are you tired of running away from problems and constantly putting off important things? It's time to break this vicious circle. Learn how to stop avoiding difficulties and start acting today. Hello, friends. Did you know that sometimes it is enough to turn an excuse for inaction into a potential opportunity, and we will talk about this further. Before we continue, please like and subscribe to the channel, and also leave a comment on this topic at the end. At the very beginning, we want to explain what coping is, so that you can better understand the essence of our video, and thus understand yourself, your insecurity, your problems and experiences. So here it is. Coping is a process during which a person uses thoughts, feelings, and actions to be able to cope with stressful situations, problems, or excessive demands of the environment, assessing them as exceeding his resources. Coping strategies can be aimed both at changing the situation itself and at changing the emotional state of a person. So, we begin. How to stop running away from problems and finally start acting. Each of us has avoided difficult and unpleasant tasks at least once in our lives, put off a workout, avoided a serious conversation, avoided household chores, rescheduled a work meeting. It is quite natural to resist anything that is outside our comfort zone. But constantly playing hide and seek with difficulties quickly turns into a vicious circle and threatens with sad consequences, including missed deadlines, low productivity, and high stress levels. If all this is familiar to you, perhaps you are using an avoidance coping strategy. What is an avoidance coping strategy? It is a type of coping strategy aimed at regulating emotions, which allows us to cope with internal and external sources of stress, from minor inconveniences to serious events. Avoidance coping is considered a maladaptive behavioral response to excessive fear and anxiety. This way of adapting to stress consists of denying unpleasant thoughts, feelings, or situations, switching our attention, downplaying them, and distancing ourselves from them, instead of trying to deal with them. Avoidance coping is a natural human response. It gives us quick, albeit temporary, relief from stress and discomfort. The ability to avoid stressful and dangerous situations is an evolutionary survival skill, firmly built into our brains. When we are faced with a real risk or threat, avoidance helps us adapt and protect ourselves. For example, if we meet a bear in the forest, we try to fight it, but we run away or hide. In the modern world, the avoidance strategy can also be considered a survival skill, because it helps us manage emotions in the short term and temporarily cope with stress, especially if circumstances and problems are beyond our control. For example, if we are overloaded with work or study, then in order to cope with stress, we can use such avoidance coping strategies as endlessly scrolling through a social media feed, or conversely, a complete refusal to interact with others. What is the danger of the avoidance coping strategy? If you use it constantly, you can get into a vicious circle where you hide from problems rather than solve them. The process usually starts at the moment when you finally intend to take on the task that you have been putting off. But even before you have time to start, the avoidance mechanism is activated and you redirect your attention to something else. The cycle itself consists of 4 stages. You feel anxiety and fear when faced with a problem or a source of stress. You try to avoid an unpleasant situation, for example, by procrastinating. Temporary relief comes, despite the fact that the problem is not solved. You continue to use avoidance methods in similar situations. The vicious circle of avoidance can be summed up in one phrase: I need, before I can. Our brain forms a fundamental belief about something in certain conditions in which it is safe to act. For example, you say to yourself, I need some quiet before I can sort through my office paperwork. I need to buy some exercise gear before I can work out. I need the perfect resume before I apply for my dream job. If you're caught in an avoidance cycle, you always have a reason why you can't do something. It doesn't matter how far-fetched or illogical it is. For some reason, your brain is convinced that it's true, and you never question it, if you even know it exists. The avoidance coping strategy is so limiting because it's hidden deep inside. Most of the time, you don't even know you've fallen victim to it. Why doesn't it work? It does not allow you to solve problems. Since the avoidance coping strategy does not eliminate the root cause, the problem does not go away. For example, if you have to take on a difficult work project, but you are distracted, you cannot set yourself up, avoiding fear and responsibility, but the project and all the problems do not disappear and will not disappear. On the contrary, it becomes even more difficult and stressful because of the impending deadline. In the same way, avoiding difficult emotions or conflicts can aggravate problems in personal relationships. If you constantly avoid unpleasant conversations with loved ones, the situation only gets worse. It increases stress. This type of coping strategy gives a temporary feeling of relief. But gradually the stress returns, because the problem remains unresolved. Let's take the example of a difficult work project. At first, everything is fine and calm. It seems to you that there is a lot of time, you can get distracted by social networks and think about everything tomorrow. But with each passing day the tension grows, because the deadlines are approaching, and you haven't done anything yet. Thus, the coping strategy of avoidance slowly but surely turns problems into a huge snowball, which causes even more stress and worsens well-being. Research shows that people who use avoidant coping strategies are less happy and healthy and more prone to anxiety and depression. Problems lower self-esteem. Why? When a person regularly avoids problems and responsibilities, he or she may develop a sense of guilt and shame, due to the fact that he or she is unable to fulfill his or her responsibilities and is stuck in one place. As a result, self-esteem drops and negative attitudes appear. For example, I am not good enough, or I can't cope with this problem. Since the root causes of the problems are not eliminated, a person caught in a vicious circle of avoidance often fails to fulfill obligations and faces complications in various areas, including career, health, and personal life. This further reduces self-esteem and undermines self-esteem. How to overcome the avoidance coping strategy? The main thing is to set a goal. Think about what you want to achieve, and then about the first 3 steps you need to take to achieve it. For example, if you want to start running, the actions would be: buy sneakers and sportswear, plan a route near your home, make a jogging schedule. How to cope with problems? First, identify the obstacles. Write down what exactly is stopping you from doing each of these 3 steps, using the templates I need, before I can, or I can't, yet. For example, I need the perfect pair of running shoes before I can run. I can't start running until I find a good route. I can't start running until I have time to create a training schedule. Don't worry if you have too many of these. The more the better. Secondly, turn obstacles into opportunities. This is the key to breaking the cycle of avoidance. You need to reframe your reasoning so that it becomes an opportunity statement. It looks like this: all I need is, and I can start. For example, all I need is to buy a pair of running shoes at the local store, and I can start running today. The power of an opportunity statement is that it shows you how to take the first step. You don't have to have a detailed plan to take action, you just need to start moving forward. The first obstacle is usually an illusion, and, as soon as you start implementing the solution to the issue, you will understand what to do next. What to do if you can't cope on your own. If you have tried several times, but there is no result, or the vicious circle of avoidance causes you anxiety and makes you feel so depressed that it interferes with your daily life, you should contact a psychologist. Perhaps the reason is related to the peculiarities of your mental and emotional state, which means you need the help of a professional. He will find out why you are turning to the avoidance coping strategy and will find more suitable ways for you that will allow you to effectively cope with problems and respond to sources of stress. All the best. Subscribe to the channel to learn more new, interesting and informative